Welcome to a web edition of Q's Countdown. I'm your host, Bailey Lipschultz, alongside Andrew Morris and Nick Dugan. The NCAA appeals coming back and saying that Coach Boeheim's 9-game suspension will not wait until ACC play and will become effective immediately. Coach Boeheim had a scathing response to the NCAA appeals in which he said, "Needless to say, I am extremely disappointed with the NCAA Infractions Appeals Committee's decision, and in particular, the NCAA Infractions Appeals Committee giving us only 2 days to make this transition when the appeal was argued weeks ago. Boeheim now has to sit out this Saturday's trip to Washington, D.C. to take on Georgetown, as well as Colgate, a road trip to St. John's, and then closing out the beginning of ACC play with a road trip to Pitt and a road trip to Miami, but he does get back the trip down to Duke and hosting North Carolina." Guys, how big is that for the Orange to make a push towards the NCAA tournament?
Well, it's huge. You think that the time frame that being moved up helps the Orange because they don't have to play without Boeheim in those tough ACC games, but they didn't give him any notice, and the NCAA was investigating itself with that Miami unreasonable ethics case. Only took 2 weeks to decide that from start to finish. They take, I think, 7 weeks here. A ridiculous outcome for the Orange.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a worry too much about the coaching staff. I think Coach Hopkins will be ready to take over this team on short notice. The players, though, I wonder how mentally prepared were they to have their coach taken away from them with just 2 days' notice. We're going to see how they respond against Georgetown on Saturday.
And for that game on Saturday, Andrew, who is your X factor now that Coach Boeheim's out?
Well, my X factor is actually an object. It's the refs' whistles. You know, Syracuse has really got to stay out of foul trouble in this one. And it's going to be tough because this is going to be a very competitive Big East-style game. A lot of bodies going to be tumbling on the floor. Going to be a competitive fight for rebounds, loose ball kind of game. So if their bigs stay out of foul trouble against some of the Georgetown 4s and 5s, then I think they got a really good chance.
Yeah, my X factor is going to be the freshmen in a true road environment for the first time. They played well in the Bahamas, but it's going to be very different in Georgetown at the Verizon Center. Georgetown 13-3 in true home games last year. I think we're going to need to see how the freshmen respond for the Orange in this game, and that could determine the outcome of the game overall.
Speaking of outcomes, Andrew, what is your final score when the clock strikes 0 with Syracuse visiting Georgetown?
I'm going Syracuse losing to Georgetown 71-61. I think 2 days is too tough of a timetable for Boeheim to be out and for that transition to really have a beneficial effect for the Orange. Mike Hopkins is going to do a good job, but the foul trouble is going to be a huge thing here, and Syracuse, like you said, the freshmen are going to have a tough time in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I struggled with this one, and I thought maybe Syracuse might be able to pull it out, but then with word of Boeheim, on such short notice, I said the players maybe not going to have enough time to respond mentally. I think Georgetown edges out Syracuse 65-60, a low-scoring defensive affair.
No love for the Orange in its first true road game. Both our analysts having Georgetown beating Syracuse pretty handily. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at CitrusTV Sports for updates throughout the game. For Nick Dugan and Andrew Morris, I'm Bailey Lipschultz.